Hello, I'm so glad you're here. This is Jennifer McGuire, and today I am sharing with you a really fun pull tab surprise card. Now, the cool thing about this card design is you can do this with different products you have, and I'll talk about that along the way. For my card, I have kind of a clean graphic card design, but then when you pull the tab, a playful kitten pops out along with a playful greeting. There are no specialty dies needed for this, so this is kind of a DIY pull tab surprise card. And again, you can change up the products used on it. This is a great universal design. I think it's best to look at the completed card in action. You can see it's a very kind of clean graphic card when you take it out of the envelope. But as soon as you pull the pull tab at the top, it becomes a little more playful with the kitten popping out and the playful greeting. And this is going to one of my best friends, Christina Werner. She has two kitties that look like this. So there's a kitty here that pops out. And then when you open up the card, there's a kitty inside too. So both cats are represented. Keep in mind that you could have anything kind of pull out there for a surprise, balloons, flowers, anything. Now the stamp set I'm using today is the Simon Says Stamp Hello There Animal Stamp Set and the coordinating dies that are available. All of the animals here would work great for this card. In addition, I'm also using an older die set from Simon Says Stamp. Now, there are actually two die sets shown here. These are the Strips 1 and Strip 2 die set. I'll be using the Strip 1 set that includes the die that cuts really thin, narrow strips. I think they're 1/8 of an inch. This is really handy to use. You could cut your own strips, but I'll talk later about why I like to use the die. Okay, let's get started. I have my MISTI stamping tool. Inside of it, I have my waffle flower grip mat that helps to hold the paper in place as we stamp. I have a scrap of white cardstock here, and I'm stamping the kitty. Again, you could use the dog or the cat image from that same stamp set or something else of the general same size. I'm stamping this with Gina Designs Obsidian Black Amalgam ink. I chose this ink because I'm going to do Copic ink or Copic marker coloring, and this ink is Copic friendly. Now I'll use the coordinating die to cut this out. The cool thing about the dies in the set is it doesn't cut the bottom edge of your little critter. So you could turn it into a bookmark, you could do partial die cutting, lots of things you can do. What I'm doing is just cutting straight lines down and then cutting it about 1/2 inch from the bottom. This is about the right size element. You could actually have a little bit taller element for this particular card design, and it really doesn't matter how wide it is. So this is about 2 1/4 inches tall, but you could probably make this up to 2 3/4 inches tall if you wanted. So if you're using different products, you want something here that is smaller than 2 3/4 inches tall and 3 inches wide. Mine is much smaller than that, but you can go bigger if you need to. All right, now for the card panel elements. We need 2 pieces of cardstock here. One is 4 inches wide by 5 inches tall. The other is 4 inches wide by 3 3/4 inches tall. Now I'm writing those measurements on here just so it's easier for you to tell. You definitely do not need to write those to create this card. Next, you'll take the smaller piece and hold it at the bottom of the bigger piece. So I'm lining up the bottom there. And then I'll use a pencil to trace right along that top edge. So right there, so I know where the top edge of that smaller piece will be. This is a guideline. Everything that you cut to make the interactive card needs to go below that pencil line. Next, we need to create 3 additional pencil lines. First, I'll make a mark at 1.5 inches from the left edge of my cardstock background, and I'll draw a line there. Again, we're going to try to stay below that pencil line we did at the top, so I just do a pencil line there. You could do this darker if you want to. No one's going to see these. Then I'll do 1.5 inches from the other edge, from the right-hand side, and draw a pencil line. This will result in 2 pencil lines there going up and down that are 1 inch apart. So that's 1 inch there in the center and 1.5 inches on each side. Now, really, this isn't that complicated. I'm just really trying to explain it the best I can. And remember, you can always refer back to the video when you create one of these cards. Okay, now for the last pencil line, I'm doing this 1 inch from the bottom of the card. Now you could measure that, or I'm using the Simon Says Stamp 6-inch T ruler, and the ruler itself is 1 inch wide. So if I line it up on the bottom, I know that's 1 inch. So we have a pencil line 1.5 from the right and the left edges, and then 1 inch from the bottom. So you can see this will all be covered up by that extra smaller white piece that we'll add later on. Now I need to cut 2 slits going from that top line to the bottom line, and I'm just darkening it with a pencil so you can see where I'm cutting. Again, you don't need to make these marks. I just wanted a good visual for you. So I'm cutting slits right along those pencil lines. It doesn't have to be exact. So I'm using my Tim Holtz Tonic Precision Trimmer. I like this trimmer because you can drop the blade anywhere and then stop it anywhere. So it's easy to cut slits like this. So I'll start at the bottom line, and I've lined up that dark pencil line over there on the right, and I'll stop at the top line. So you can see I've cut a slit. Then I'll put it back in, but slightly offset, just a hair, just moved over to the left a little bit, and I'll do the same thing. So I'm cutting 2 cut lines very, very close together. Then I can take that little hair of cardstock out of it, and you can see I have a nice slit there. Now, if you do not have a trimmer like this, you definitely could do this with a craft knife. There are also dies out there that cut like long slits for you, but this is really easy to do even with a craft knife or with scissors. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your slits could be a little wider if you want to. And if you want to, you could just do 1 slit where it's just 1 cut. It doesn't have to be a wide one, but I find that what I did here is what gives the best results. It didn't take long to do at all. Next, you need 2 pieces of cardstock cut to 1 inch by 1/2 inch. This can be a scrap, it can be any color you want because no one will see it. I will fold each of these in half. So you'll end up with these little flaps. Again, these were 1 inch by 1/2 inch, and I'm folding them in half. Once I have reinforced those little fold lines, I'll put double-sided tape on the outside of these flaps. So there'll be 4 pieces of double-sided tape. Now you could use liquid adhesive for this, but for the ease of the video and not having to wait for it to dry, I went with double-sided tape. You definitely do want to use something strong here. This is what will create that sliding effect, so you don't want it to fall apart. So the key is to use an adhesive you trust. And here are the 2 pieces that we have. These 2 pieces are what makes this whole thing work. All right, I'll take the first little sliding element, that's what I'm going to call this little blue piece, and put it in the bottom of 1 slit. And you can see half of the sliding element's out the back and half is out the front. I do like to put a little piece of tape on that just so that it stays put as we put this together. So I'm just using some temporary tape. Then we'll do the same thing at the bottom of the other slit. Just so you know, the writing that's on this white cardstock piece, that is now the back of this panel. So that just helps to kind of plan things out, but this is the back that you're looking at right now. Now I can remove the release paper from these little sliding mechanisms. And then on top of this, I'm placing our slider piece, which is over there on the right. I cut this off screen. I'm going to pause it so you can see. It is 2.5 inches wide by 5 inches tall. You could go a little bit wider. You could go a little bit narrower, but this is a great size and makes for a nice strong pull tab. Now I'm going to place this onto that exposed adhesive so that there's about 1/2 inch there on the bottom, maybe a little more, and then equal amount on the left and the right of it. So you can see how I'm positioning that there and I'm pressing it down. The only thing that is adhered to are those 2 little adhesive pieces on that sliding mechanism. So this is the back of the card that you're looking at now. Now I can flip this over and remove that temporary tape, and I can make sure things are starting to slide okay. Whenever I do an interactive card, I like to test it a lot, because if at some point I'm stuck, I need to stop and figure out what I did wrong. Now we can add the element that we want to move on our card, the surprise element. Now I have my little kitty here, and I'll be honest, I'm not doing any spectacular coloring here. I just wanted to color this as fast as I can. You know, I say a lot in videos that I'm not great at coloring. I do fine, but I just don't enjoy coloring like some people do. It's kind of a means to an end for me. So I did very basic coloring to try to make this kitty look like Christina's Sophie. All right, so now I can remove the release paper from the sliding mechanism here on the front, and I'm going to pull it all the way to the top position. I have my front panel and I'm just holding it here, not pressing down, just holding it to see where I want the cat to end up. So I'm putting this down in where I want the cat's final position to be when you pull the tab all the way up. You could have it go higher, so if you had a taller element, it could pull up even more out of the card. But for this element, I just picked a position there, and now you can see how it slides up and down. I just pressed the back of that cat onto those 2 little tabs on the sliding mechanism. So there you can kind of get an idea of the direction we're headed. Next, I have a note card that I created top folding that is 4¼ inches wide by 5¼ inches tall. This is 1/4 inch shorter than normal. The reason I did that is because I want to be able to have a pull tab sticking off the top, but still have it fit into an envelope. Now we can glue all of our mechanisms together. I've flipped this over and I'll put some strong foam tape around the edges. You want the foam tape to go close to that pull tab, but not right up against it. You want a little wiggle room. I'm using Altenew foam tape here. You can use whatever foam tape you may have. I usually don't use much foam tape. So normally I would just cut a bunch of 1/2 inch scraps from cardstock and stack them up for dimension, but to save time, I'm going with that foam tape. And I put it along the left, the right, and right along the bottom. Again, a little wiggle room around that pull tab. So you can see that it'll still slide up and down very easily. If you want to skip the dimension, you could also just put regular glue around that edge and it'll still work fine. All right, now I can remove the release paper from this and I'll place this mechanism onto our note card. Again, remember, our note card is 1/4 inch shorter than normal so that the pull tab can stick off the top. So we need to cut that pull tab shorter. I like to start with longer just so I can make sure that I have it positioned just right. I'll put this in my trimmer. I have the left edge there at the 5½ inch mark and I'll cut it off. So now the total height of this, including that tab when closed, is 5½ inches. Now I'll use my corner chomper to round these corners. I just like the look of that being rounded, but you could leave with sharp corners if you prefer. And there we go, we have our pull tab working. Now it's time to add the front to it. I thought it'd be fun to make the front of this card look very clean and simple and kind of graphic looking so that when you pull the tab, it all of a sudden is very different with a playful feel. So I have that white cardstock panel to go on the bottom front that is 3¾ inches tall by 4 inches wide, the piece I showed you earlier. I'll use an embossing folder on this just for a bit of texture. I have my Gina Designs Intri-Cut Die Cut Machine. It has a dial on the side, which makes it easy to figure out, and I've set the dial to use with an embossing folder. I have a lattice embossing folder from Gina Designs. I put my cardstock in it, I'll run it through, and I get a beautiful lattice pattern. Now you definitely could skip this step or you could do stamping here, whatever you want. Now remember that strip die that I showed you at the beginning that cuts really narrow strips? I went through some scraps, some rainbow scraps, and cut a bunch of strips. I actually did this some time ago and I've kept the leftovers in a container. So I'm going back and using some of those now. I have a piece of white cardstock here and I'm put adhesive over the top edge, kind of covering it as much as I can. And I'm placing each of the strips right into that adhesive, making sure that they're right up against each other. Now the reason I use that strip die to cut all of these strips is because when you use a die to cut your strips, it gets like a beveled edge to it. And when you put all the strips close to each other, you see more definition between the colors. You could use a trimmer just to cut your own strips, but you lose that beveled edge, and then the colors kind of blend into each other more. It's totally up to you, two very different looks, but I love the look of strips cut with a die. After I have all of the rainbow strips glued down close together, I can trim off the excess. By the way, the reason I glued these strips onto this piece of white cardstock is because I turned it into one element here. And now I can easily add this one element onto our textured embossing folder background. So I have my Gina Connect liquid adhesive. I put some on the back, and I'll put this right onto the top edge of our background piece here. And then I can trim off the excess. At this point, I thought it'd be fun to stamp something on that pull tab there so that another greeting pops up. So before I glue that rainbow piece on, let's go ahead and stamp the greeting on the pull tab. So I have the pull tab completely pulled up to the top position, and I'm stamping hello there on it using that same animal stamp set I showed you at the beginning of the video. The stamp is actually oh hello there, but I just wanted hello there. I could have gone with the oh, I went back and forth, but hello there fit nicely. So I cut my stamp apart. I know some people don't like to cut stamps, but it really is a great way to extend the use you can get out of them. And you can always put the two halves of the image back together and stamp them together anytime. Another option would be to mask off the word "oh" when you do the stamping, then you don't need to cut it. So I'm stamping this with black ink, and this will be a nice kind of playful message that comes up when the kitty pops up. I also have a small image that says pull. It's from this My Favorite Things interactive labels stamp set. This is one I've had for a long time. It has a lot of interactive messages in it. You can instead just write pull on there lightly with a light gray marker. I'm stamping this with Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, which is a beautiful light gray ink. Now it's super light, so I'm going to stamp it a few times so you can see it a bit better. And I'm just stamping that right at the top center of the pull tab. Speaking of sentiments, I forgot I needed to add one to the front, so I'm going to put it right across the rainbow. To do so, I have black and white cardstock, and I'm putting double-sided adhesive sheet on the back of them. So this basically turns my black and white cardstock into a sticker. That way, when I die cut it, all my die cuts will already have adhesive on the back. Now, I don't always do this. You could if you wanted to, but I'm doing it here because you'll see that these little pieces are very intricate. This is the Simon Says Stamp Friend Outline die. It's an older die with a really cool style to it. When you cut it, you get the outline of the letters and the solid part of the letters. So I'm keeping the solid part of the letters of black and then the outline of white. And again, I've die cut this from adhesive or from cardstock with adhesive on the back. So all of these pieces already have the glue, so it's easy to put together. So I'm collecting all my pieces up there on the top of the screen. I then have a scrap of bright green cardstock where I use the same die to cut, but I'm only using the negative space. And I'm trimming the negative space very tight so that I can figure out the placement with this. I'm putting the negative space exactly where I want the word friend to be. By using this negative space as a guide, I can get the positioning just right for each letter. I don't have to worry about sizing or centering it or keeping it straight as I glue my letters down. The negative space will be the perfect guide. I'm using that temporary tape to hold it in place, and now I can pop in my die cuts. So I'm using the white outline, you can see me press that down, and then the black in the center of it. Because adhesive is on the back, this is actually very quick to do. After I've placed my letters down, I use a bone folder to really press that adhesive in place. The handy thing about using these adhesive sheets is that you can move things around. And then once you're happy with the placement, you can press it with your bone folder or with your finger very firmly, and it'll stick for good. So I filled in all of those letters, and now I can remove that guide, and we have our sentiment added to the rainbow. The last step here is to add this to the front of the card, and you need to put adhesive right along the outside edges on the left, the right, and the bottom, but not the top, because we don't want to glue our pull tab closed. Now you could use thin strips of foam tape here for added dimension, or you could just use regular glue, and that will keep the dimension down. I decided to go between. I have a bunch of 1/4 inch cardstock strips that I've cut from scraps. Instead of throwing it away, I cut those strips and I put them to good use. I am gluing 2 strips together and putting one along the right, one along the left, and then one along the bottom. This just will give me a tiny bit of dimension, but not as much as foam tape. So it's just a nice way to kind of control the dimension that you get. Now, if you wanted to, again, you could skip the dimension and just glue this directly onto the front of the card by putting adhesive on the back left, right, and bottom edges. But again, stay close to the edges. You don't want any adhesive there in the middle. That will hinder the kitty from moving out of the panel. Okay, so we have adhesive along these 3 sides, and I can place that on top of our card panel. And because I used liquid adhesive, I can wiggle it until it's just in the right position. Now let's test it out by pulling the tab, and you can see the little kitty that pops out. Now I could decorate that kitty and add like little glasses or a bow. A lot of those elements are included in the stamp set, but I decided to leave the kitty as is and instead add a few little red hearts. This is one of my most used dies. It's the Simon Says Stamp Mini Heart Party die. It cuts lots of hearts in different sizes. I cut from the same red cardstock that I used in the strips there, and I'm gluing 3 little hearts to that pull tab. All those leftover red hearts will be kept in a little bowl next to where I work, so the next time I need one, they'll be ready to go. I will also use my black glaze pen to add a little bit of highlight to the eyes and the nose. I like to do this on my critters because it gives a little bit of shine that makes it stand out even more and makes it super crisp black. All right, after giving that some time to dry, we have our completed card. Remember that this note card I cut a little bit smaller so that the pull tab could stick out the top and it'll still fit into a regular envelope. So this is a regular A2 envelope. When you see the card closed, it kind of has a clean graphic look to it, but then when you pull the tab, it instantly becomes playful. So the overall design of this is something that you can use with a variety of products. So using the same measurements and such, and you can glue a variety of different images instead of a cat onto it. You could use an image that's a bit taller, and when you pull the tab, it'll stick out even more. You can really change this up. I encourage you to give it a try because this is something that'll allow you to make a surprise card to give to anyone. Now, if you are interested in what I used here, I do have it all linked below in my YouTube description. There's also a link to a supply list. It'll be right at the top of the description. If you click that link to the supply list, it pulls up a visual list. It has thumbnails of all the different products I use, making it easy to find what you're looking for. At the end here, I'll also link to a couple other related videos. They are also pull tab surprise cards, but done in different ways. I encourage you to watch them and choose one to give a try. I think today's method is the most universal, but it's always fun to try different ideas. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.